It's nice and busy. Good morning. First up, so hopefully I can set a standard. So I'm Sam Yole. I'm Director of Global Operations for the L3Harris Airline Academy. Going to talk about some of the opportunities that we're starting to bring into ab initio, so initial pilot training, through the use of data. Try and keep it interesting because it can get a bit in the detail. So one of the things with L3Harris, we make black box flight data recorders for airlines. We build equipment that go on the on passenger planes. We have a flight data analytics company as part of the business. Within commercial operations, this is a requirement. It's every commercial operator is required to do this. They've been doing it now for about the last 10 years. We're now the first academy to start bringing the same tools, techniques, approaches into academy training as well. Just want to talk through what that looks like, some of the advantages, some of the benefits, some of the opportunities for the future. The intention here is really bringing that to improve a training experience, improve the ability to learn whilst flying, improve safety, create airline-ready pilots. Students that have gone through an academy that uses data in this way will go into an airline and be familiar with it from the start, as well as making it more effective and enjoyable, adding a whole range of tools. Sorry, I need to hold this even higher. Can everyone hear me at the back? Yeah, cool. So training improvement. So now, even within cars, you can get a black box, you can get a readout, tells you how well you're driving or how badly. But being able to review that data, understand your flying performance as you're training, helps enhance that learning. We can do trend identification. I've got some numbers, only a couple, but I've got some numbers later on that just goes to show within an academy environment how much data is generated by our aircraft with modern avionics and what that can mean in terms of being able to look back through all of that and identify things that no human would ever be able to pick up on. We can do safety event monitoring, so we're able to monitor every single flight, every second of every flight, compare that against some key thresholds, and identify where there are opportunities to improve. And we can look at operational efficiency. Now, this is where the airlines really hammer home on this, fuel saving, things like that, but ways that we can start to understand within an academy environment how we can be more efficient, burn less fuel, good for the environment, those sorts of things, produce less noise, things like that. So, the quote there, 1,000,001 quotes on this sort of thing. Data is useful, but insight is powerful. Our aircraft, one aircraft every hour records and transmits about 288,000 bits of data. That's a very, very big spreadsheet. That's every hour per aircraft. From that, our partners at Flight Data Solutions, part of L3Harris, they enhance that data. So they take that seamlessly and they turn that into some key breakdowns of actually understanding that flight. So on average, break that down into about 200 key time instances, so key points in a phase of flight, engine on, touchdown, takeoff, those sorts of things. And they analyze key point values, so critical bits out of all of those 288,000 bits per hour. What are the key points in there at the different phases of flight that really matter? Vertical G on touchdown, how big a bump was it? Yeah, pulls that sort of data out. And then that gets compared against, at the moment, 21, it's growing all the time, key safety thresholds. These are the really critical ones. And overall, we get around 12 actionable, understandable insights every day within our operation, okay? So that's that kind of pyramid. And the beauty here is all of that is effectively done for us by the system and by the tools, okay? So we have a dashboard. Every single flight, within about 2.5 minutes of it landing, has transmitted the data wirelessly. It's been analysed. It's available for us to review. And we can go in and see a flight. So I've got a few examples to talk through. I will lead this by saying I'm no pilot. If you are and I say things wrong, I apologise, but I think I'm on. So here's an example, real flight. This is a student towards the end of their training. They're doing the MEIR, multi-engine instrument rating. In that, they're doing some of the more complex aviation maneuvers. Crew resource management is really important. So you can imagine if you're doing an instrument approach, you're controlling the aircraft, you're trying to manage against an instrument flight path that's being given to you by the airfield, and you're trying to manage all those different aspects of that flight to create a smooth, clean, safe final approach and touchdown. This should be playing back. This is the dangerous bit. First rule of presenting, never put a video in, but it's working. So, students going in for a final approach at Southend. They're doing an instrument approach, and it calls the ball. On the avionics, you see there's little balls there. They're trying to keep those indicators on those two balls, okay? And that means that they'll be hitting that glide slope. Now, they're trying to manage several things here. So they're focused on that instrument indications. Southend is actually a little bit steeper than most instrument approaches. So it's a bit of an unfamiliar one for this student. They're trying to manage airspeed, and airspeed plus that glide slope translate to rate of descent. How fast are you descending? Now what's happening here, and this is a normal part of training, is this student is just trying to balance those different things. At the moment, they're focused on those indicators. So they're meeting that glide slope, but their speed, you can see on the left there, it's about 115 knots. Ideally, it should be 90 to 100. Now, because they're going a bit faster than expected, their rate of descent on the right-hand side there, it's quite small, but that's going everywhere up to about 800 feet per minute descent. We would like that to be about 500 feet. And so what's happening, and you can just about see it there, that final approach that's coming down, they're following the glide slope, that instrument approach, but it's not as stable, it's not as assured, it's not as smooth as it should be. Now, nothing unsafe here, this is, I'll call that out, but as a method of learning, this is a tool where traditionally, after the flight, in a room with debrief with an instructor would talk this through. They might wave their hands around or get a little wooden model of a plane and explain it. They might have taken a few notes about what certain things are. Here we're able to load it up on the screen, we're able to play it back, we're able to show them what was on the instruments at the time, we're able to show them what the aircraft was doing mid-air at the time, okay? And just as a really enhanced debrief and method of giving that information across. So there we go. The next one we've got is a safety event, okay? So this is slightly different. This is a student right at the beginning of their training journey. Now, interestingly, students start going solo quite early in their flying career. This is in Florida, where we do a lot of our fair weather flying. Students out on one of their very first solos, came in, landed, reported a puncture, okay? It happens. Now, typically, traditionally, you'd say puncture, okay, they happen, replace the tyre, check the aircraft over quickly, perhaps ask the runway to do a quick FOD check, just make sure there's no debris on the runway. Off we go. We were able to look at this, and what we actually found was this student, slightly unstable approach, a bit nervous, learning the ropes, actually came in a little bit hard and landed on the nose wheel rather than on the rear wheels, okay? So our normal landings are around here in terms of G, about 1.1. For reference, that's a gentle bump. This particular student landed at 1.9 G. That's a firmer bump, but importantly did it on the nose wheel, popped the tyre, okay? Now, this student's really early in their training journey doing solos. Now, we still do a debrief after every single flight, but if you just visualize that, that's a student going out on their own in a light aircraft, flying off over the horizon, coming back, landing. How was your flight? That was great. Any issues? No, had a punch on. Any issues with the landing? No, it was fine. Because in a lot of instances here, the students so early in their career, they can't really analyze themselves, their own performance. And so it takes a real, really highly trained instructors to really try and tease out the right information. But in some instances, they're just not able, they haven't got the experience to really be able to pull this information out. With this, we're able to, again, this was part of a safety debrief, but as part of a debrief, able to really play that flight back through, talk through it, and provide that experienced eye on the flight, even though they're not in the cockpit. So in this instance, we did an enhanced debrief. There were some decisions that perhaps weren't the best decisions that the student made. Again, they were fine, but they could be better. So we did some additional work with that student just to improve that performance and that decision making, make sure they're safe, make sure they're learning, make sure they're progressing. And actually we made 5 changes to our operational performance and our processes there. Things like reviewing. In Sanford, we have the luxury of 4 runways that we can operate out of. They move, they change runway depending on wind and commercial operations, those sorts of things. We've now built in additional checks so that the ground crew can be helping to monitor and support those guys that are out in their early stages of flying. Our next case study. So I mentioned earlier, 288,000 data points per hour. Per day, just in Florida, we transmit and analyze 234 million bits of data every day. Okay? If we do that per month, it turns into 7 billion bits of data. That's a really big spreadsheet. Now that's across several hundred students and pilots and instructors across a whole range of operation, different aircraft types, different flying types, all those sorts of things. What our analytics engine lets us do is really crunch that data and turn it into that insight, do that pyramid for us. We're not trying to look through 7 billion bits of data. We're looking for the 2 or 3 key bits of understanding that come out across all of that operation. And in this example, we do a monthly report that comes through. We had a specific runway out in Florida. One of the advantages of Florida as a flying environment is within about 30 miles flying, there's a dozen airfields that you can go and operate out of, go and land. This particular runway, every single time we landed there, we recorded a firmer than average landing. Okay? Now, when we looked into this, no individual pilot landed at that runway twice that month. Everyone was a unique pilot that went out there. Okay? But every single time, it was a firm landing. Now, no individual pilot would have picked that up or noticed it, but the system helped us see that. When we look into it, we found that this is a runway that actually has some contours to it, shall we say, built on a hill. And so that runway actually comes up to meet the plane as the aircraft's coming back down, leads to a slightly firmer bump. So we're able to brief that out. We're able to share that with our instructor population. We're able to share that to our students when they're checking a flight out, they log their flight plan. Our dispatch team are able to point that out and just remind them, you know, you're going into an uphill slope here, just be aware of that. A great example, this is very similar to what happens in commercial operations. Bristol. Bristol Airport, I'm told, is notorious for having quite a big rise as you come in from a commercial plane. And so again, within commercial operations, anyone that's flying into Bristol gets briefed on that. Otherwise, you're going to have a firm bump. Okay. This was a couple of months ago that we saw this. We got the same data through last month across those 7 billion data points again. That particular runway fell to 0 hard landings because of that communication that we're able to get out there. Okay? So, what benefits have we seen? Hopefully you think this is quite exciting. We certainly do. As I say, the commercial world has been doing this for about a decade now with flight data recorders and the analytics. We're just bringing this in. It's new. And within a training environment where you've got student pilots and light aircraft, it's taken a lot of work. But we're already seeing some real key benefits. So we're getting those proactive actions in to reduce risk. We fly a lot of hours. And with that, light aircraft, it is a risky endeavour. We're able to proactively manage that on top of our routine safety management approaches. That alignment to airline operations and standard operating procedures. So we're very key that we're trying to create airline-ready pilots, bringing this tool into their training journey. It's exactly how every airline pilot will be using this every single day. as part of their normal role. We've seen those improvements in event trends, that example of firm landings at a specific runway, but others where we start seeing them, we're able to feed that back out. We have monthly safety stand downs, those sorts of things. We bring this insight into those to help inform the group. An interesting one, we've seen an increased rate of self-reported safety concerns. And so people aren't relying on saying, oh, well, the system will tell me if there's a problem. They're actually much more aware, much more engaged with how their individual actions in the aircraft or indeed on the ground flow back through the system. And we're actually seeing an increased rate of self-recording, okay, which is great to see. It's one of the very biggest indicators of an effective safety culture, is that rate of self-reporting. And we're getting really positive student feedback. So digitally enabled generation, using digital tools, using an environment. What we're trying to do is get it onto VR as well, because we think that'd be really cool. Okay. But we're just scratching the surface. So what's next? Here are some of the things. Now, I will say some of these might be a few years off, but some of the things that we're looking at to try and take the next steps on this. We'd like to support regulation change. In the FAA in the US, once you've graduated, you need to hit 1,500 hours before you can go into the cockpit. Very, very different from Europe. We'd like to support that and help work with the regulator in the US to point out that as long as somebody is safe, effective, competent as a pilot, why do they need an arbitrary 1,500 hours? That 1,500 hours could be achieved by going and burning circles in the sky, not really doing much, yeah? One of the areas that airlines use this, so FDS, our partners who do this analytics for us as part of L3Harris, they actually host a website by the global aviation regulator. And in that, all of the data from every airline gets anonymized, they call it de-identified, aggregated up and played back to the industry. So an airline can look at how are they climbing, how are their flights climbing out of London Heathrow in comparison to all of the other airlines that fly out of Heathrow. And they're able to feed that loop back in. We think there's a lot of opportunity here with pilots going through their training journey, being able to see a similar thing. How does their flight compare to the peers, yeah, as an anonymized average? Mentioned earlier, airlines really use this for things like fuel burn, for things like noise abatement, those efficient operations on taxiing, takeoff, etc. We'd really like to be bringing that into the academy environment as well, part of that airline preparation. It's a tricky topic. When you're learning to drive, the last thing you want to have to worry about is what MPG you're hitting. You want to be learning to drive. Same in a plane. We don't want our students worrying so much about these sorts of things that they forget to focus on their learning. But we think there's some real opportunities here that we can start to introduce as part of the training journey to bring it more in line with an airline operation. And last but not least, I'd really like to be bringing this into the selection and screening before somebody even starts learning to fly, okay? I'd love to be creating the conditions whereby someone can come into screening, do a flight on a simulator, and the data that comes out starts to give us an idea of their competencies across different areas. How good is that individual's hand-eye coordination? How good are their fine motor skills? How good are those core competencies that through the journey of learning to be a pilot, graduating as a pilot, all get brought up to a certain level? If we can identify where people are already hitting that mark or have got some real skill or real aptitude, I'd like to be bringing that back in and shaping the syllabus in order to suit their needs. Why am I going to spend a ton of time focusing on something that someone's already really good at? I prefer to spend that time focusing on their areas of improvement. Okay, that's going to need to link into the regulation change as well, though. Okay, so that was quite a lot of talking. 7 billion data points. I don't think I did that many words. Any questions? Any thoughts? So like everything, it's all down to the wording. So we do this because on our aircraft, we've got Garmin G1000 avionics. They have an SD card in them. That's how we get the data. There are tools out there where you can download that data, play back a flight, okay? We are the only one, we believe, that is feeding it through a commercial grade analytics engine to do that insight analysis, okay? We can say that with confidence with FDS, who's one of the main providers of that, because they're part of L3Harris and we know they're not providing it to anyone else. There are a couple of others out there, but we know what it's taken us over the last few years to get that analytics engine working for a light aircraft. They fly very differently to an A320 or a 787. We believe we're the only ones that are using it to that level of commercial grade. Okay. Any other questions? Go on, no, go for it.
Are airlines actually using stuff to
No. So we are being very careful here. So we feel that there is a line between ab initio training and then selection once you're graduated to be a pilot. Once you've graduated, you have hit the standards. You've got your frozen ATPL license. You are able to be a commercial pilot. How your training journey got there, some of it will be public knowledge and be part of it. So ground school exam results, those sorts of things, how many hours you've flown to get there. But we feel that during that kind of 12 months or so of flying, everyone has their ups and downs, their strengths, their weaknesses. Trying to just use data to pull out, well, are you a good pilot? We don't feel is appropriate. So we're being very careful not to share that data with an airline. We are working on ways that the pilot themselves can have their own personal view if they then wish to share it. Great. Airlines as well are focused a lot more now on the individual. So yes, have you got your license? How long did it take you to get it? That sort of thing is very important. But also personality fit is a really big one now. Culture is huge. Whenever we look at airline programs, cadet programs that airlines are looking to operate, cultural fit is absolutely massive. It's really prime. I'll throw a question out because I know it's early. So I mentioned right at the beginning, L3Harris make black boxes for commercial airliners. What colour's a black box? Orange or red, yeah. Okay, just so it's nicely identifiable. We've just released a brand new black box called Survivor 25. It's quite cool. But yeah. Any other questions? No. I think I've done on time, so that's good. Thank you. Hopefully that was interesting. Feel free to talk to the team that's on the stand about it. I'll be there for the next few hours as well. So come and say hello and have a great rest of the day. Thanks very much.